Hi, welcome to the coaching game. I am Laurie Lawson, and next to me is amazingly an old-time friend, not old, but old time, Maggie Johnson. Hey, Maggie.
Hi, Laurie. It's nice to see you again. Good afternoon.
Great to see you. Actually, Maggie and I graduated from the same training course, and can we tell them how long ago it was? Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
what the heck? 2004. We couldn't believe it ourselves when we went back and went, really? Yeah. And just recently, we reconnected somewhere in between those however many years. And then we just recently reconnected. And I was kind of fascinated with what Maggie's been doing with her coaching. Not everybody in our class ended up coaches. They did other cool things, but Maggie sort of held the line, sort of like I have. It's like, yeah, I know I want to keep this coaching thing around. So I figured, I said, come on the show and let's talk about what's going on. Plus, she's got this fantastic venture that she's in the middle of and that we're going to tell you all about too. But Maggie, I'm so thrilled to have you on the show.
Yeah, nice to be here, Laurie. So, briefly, as you know, we graduated from our coaching course 18 years ago. And my idea at that time was to go into coaching full time, but I was offered a position, and I have been in the HR field for more than those years, actually. But for all of those years, I was in HR, and I was at a senior level. I was a chief human resources officer, but I always use the coaching techniques it came in so handy in many other ways, whether I was helping employees to improve their performance, whether I was coaching supervisors to be better supervisors, whatever the case may be, it came in very strongly throughout my career. So I'm so grateful that I had that training.
It almost seems like a natural pairing also, because now when you see things, you'll see that the International Coach Federation is teamed up with SHRM, which is the that human resources organization. And I too have a human resources background way back when. I had dropped it by the time 2004 came along. But what I'm curious about is when I was doing human resources, I'm not sure there was room for coaching. The reason I left the profession is because I felt like I was a buffer between management and the employees and never allowed to express any kind of feelings because you had to remain so neutral and you had to, be impartial and blah, blah, blah. How has that, please tell me it's changed, but how
Yeah,
has
I
it
think I
changed?
think it has changed. I mean, there's always, when you're dealing with employee relations, there's always that aspect to it. But CEOs, chief executives today, and boards of directors really care about company culture and company reputation. And that all comes from the employee, the experience they're having as an employee. And I really feel that the training they get in an organization, it's up to the employer to see if they succeed. And when they don't succeed, for whatever the reason may be, it's time for us to ask ourselves, where did we go wrong? And in my career, I think that, I didn't just coach employees, how to handle things that might be going on and ask them questions and all of that. But I also did it with supervisors, which I felt was more key, because the supervisor, you know what they say about employees, when they leave a company, they're not really leaving the company, they're leaving the supervisor. And
Wow.
so if I could help supervisors be better supervisors, that I saw as a really important role. And so throughout my career, I've always kind of emphasized that part of it, and put in programs such as I did in my last company called the Supervisor Exchange, trying to help them become the best they can be as a supervisor. And I think many of them succeeded very well and were very open to it. But it was really kind of coaching. I mean, I wasn't there telling them what to do. You know how coaching works. It works best when people find it on their own, but from the questions that you have prompted them to find that solution.
Right, right.
And so very often I actually just facilitated to that.
Have
But
you
no, I
have
do
you
think
found?
it's changed. Mhm, go
Yeah,
on.
yeah. The supervisor. I love that. The supervisor. What is it? The exchange? Is that what you said?
Yeah, that was what we had at my last company. Yeah.
Yeah, and what a great idea. Yeah, to help people draw off one another. And then
Mm.
have you noticed though, or because I have you noticed that how coaching has evolved since 2004? I know when we were doing it, nobody knew what a coach was, you know. It's like,
Yeah.
what sport are you coaching? And I'm like 5'3", so obviously none. But anyway, um, and but if we came about in an organization, it was like as a punishment. It was like, okay, you got one more chance. If you see, go see this coach, and if you don't straighten up, you're gone. How has it evolved? How have you seen it evolve? Because
I
like I
think
said,
that's
I
involved.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember in the old days that um, a particular, he'll remain nameless, but a particular person that was having some difficulty, he was very good at his job, but the turnover in his area of responsibility was extraordinarily high.
Mm.
And we were having a lot of issues with employee complaints, and some of them quite serious. So we brought in an executive coach. But I will say, even back then, it worked remarkably well. I mean, this guy was extremely resistant to the idea, but went along with it. By the end of it, he was completely in favor, and even had his executive coach attend his business meetings. So it did because coaching, I think, for executives can be so incredibly valuable, regardless of the level, whether you are the chief executive or whether you're in the C-suite or maybe a couple of ranks down. It is extraordinarily valuable to have someone that you can speak to that in and this there. Let's make it clear: a coach is not a therapist, but where you have someone that you know is in your corner, that you can speak openly and safely to, that everything is kept confidential, and you can find answers to the things that bother you. But it's not just about finding answers to problems. It's also about finding ways to grow professionally, ways to grow personally. It's advancing yourself and seizing opportunity. That all ties into it.
And ways to get there quicker. I mean, that's it's
Yeah.
the thing that you're right. The differentiation between a therapist and a coach is a therapist sometimes wants to go back and figure out, oh, what
Yeah.
happened in the past. You know, a coach is like, where are you now, and how can we get to where you want to go? You know,
Yeah.
and it's just let's move forward, and here's some techniques to do that. So, and somewhere in between when we graduated and now, emotional intelligence came about, and it was
Yeah.
like suddenly everyone was really, wait, these are real life human beings that are working for us, and if they're not happy, then we're not happy either, because they're not going to do the job we need them to do.
Yeah, no, I would agree with all of that. And especially in these days of remote work, you want to have productive employees, and what better way to have them productive than, the old saying, happy employees are more productive. And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure employees are fully engaged, that they enjoy the work they do, that they feel get satisfaction from it, that they feel valued and respected, and all of those things are very important. Recently, I've been working on programs such as diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging, and been putting those programs in place because it's so important that, especially in a diverse workforce, that everybody feels like they belong there and feel respected. And that's regardless of whether you're in the office or not, you know?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I'm an advocate, of course, of trickle down theory, but I'm also an advocate of trickle up theory. And it's like you've got to, if you've got a great boss, but all your employees are still so unhappy. And so they're not, it's got to meld. And sometimes I think that's the role of the coach, it's like, okay, how are we going to get these two diverse groups together on the same page so we can, have the company soar? Did you find, and I did you find that there was pandemic, there was a difference after the pandemic, or during the pandemic, I guess, because I think we both were lucky enough to keep working. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
But the priorities changed. It wasn't for an employee, it wasn't like, oh, I want that corner office. And for the boss, it was the rules had changed. And it's like I found that some leaders were kind of like, what up? It's like, where are we going here? It's like I used to know exactly the goals, and now there are no rules. Did you find that changed and you had to adjust your coaching to that?
Yeah, I think it changed on both sides. I think that from employees, touching on the point you just made, working the way up the corporate ladder was no longer important. It was more about quality of life.
Yeah.
And although the pandemic was certainly not a good situation, and I would never say it was, but things came out of it that have changed the way we work now. And I'm not just talking about the idea of remote work, but the quality of life factor. The reason why people wanted to work remotely was it wasn't just savings on commute costs. It was actually being the opportunity to be with their family more. They still worked a full day. I never saw any significant loss of productivity at all.
Really?
No, never saw that. But I do think people, on the plus side, the opportunity to be with their families, to be able to work from anywhere. So no longer did they necessarily have to live in the city if they didn't want to, but they could live where they chose. And those kind of things, I think, really opened up their eyes that this is more important than, trying to get up some corporate ladder. And I think on the other side, on the senior management side, was they got a surprise. They got a surprise, number one, that people didn't need to be supervised in person, that they could be trusted to do their work. I think that came as a surprise. And I think it came as a surprise when there was, in some cases, resistance to return to work. I mean, when I say return to work, return to the workplace.
Right.
Rather than, and I think that some companies are still seeing that, as we can tell in New York City, how many people are back at work. I think it was, last time I checked, I think it was around the less than 50% for certain.
Right. I mean, because of things like Zoom and, you can faxes, if you still use that, computer streaming, you don't need a location where you go into the office. I think there were a few blessings of the pandemic, if you can call them that. One is this show. You and I would have been able to tape in the studio, but I've had people like in Ireland tape it now because it's done via Zoom. And two is, and I hope it lasts, and I'm not sure that it will, but two is we sort of redefine what is an essential job. Is it a vice president, or is it the guy who delivers your materials till you can produce? So, and we've sort of, it opened our eyes to, there are many cogs that go into this wheel and
Exactly.
the turning. And I think that's a blessing. I hope one that, continues to be.
Well, I'm sorry, the phone is ringing.
Oh. That's okay. You can tell we're taping from home.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. It should stop in a moment.
It'll stop, yeah.
And surprisingly, that's my daughter's ring, and she's a TV producer. She should know
really?
better.
Yell at her as soon as this is over. Or tell her, how do we fix that? I have a landline and I could not figure out how to turn that off, and it repeats my message. And finally I said, take the stupid thing off the hook. And that's what I do now. I just
I know.
and it goes beep, beep, beep. And it's like I just ignore it. It's like, okay. But that's okay. Carry on.
But anyway, so but I can see value in the hybrid schedule, because I do think that on the opposite side of the coin, while working at home did bring some advantages, the disadvantages were perhaps isolation for some people. Not having that camaraderie that you build in with a team in the office. So I
Right.
think, you know, the hybrid schedule probably works quite well. You
Little
know,
bit
at
of
least you
this,
have,
a little bit of that.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Without the pressure of, oh my God, I've got to jump on the subway every day and I got to get there, within this amount of time. Yeah. I mean, for the people who moved away and said, I'll work from home, okay, it seems to be working. What I'm amazed is, and I don't have a thought on it. I don't know if you do. There's what is this? There's so many people that quit their jobs, and it's like, and they don't want to go back to work. But it's like, how are you paying the rent? I don't get it, But however you're doing it, good for you. But you're right. It was people who said, you know what? I'm going to take the quality of life. I might have to do without 400 cable channels, but this is my priority right
But I
now.
think what was good about that, though, was it made employers feel the same way, and there has been, I would say, more emphasis on quality of life for employees. There's definitely been an emphasis on providing things like mental health treatment, or maybe not even treatment, but just a more of a concern to make sure that people are okay, and where before that didn't exist. So I think there's been some things that emphasize how important employees are to a company. They're not just there to do work anymore. They're far more than that. I
Wow,
think
that's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. 'Cause I'm
I
always
think
looking at it from the employee point of view, but that's a very good point. Yeah. So tell me, I know you've gotten involved I know you've been doing coaching the whole time. So kudos to you and kudos to me. We did it, It's like they're gonna make good use of that money that we spend. Um, but what recently were telling me about this fantastic program that you're involved in called Vistage. Tell me what that's all about, because it sounds like a great opportunity to increase knowledge that you have to get trained. Tell us about it. Tell us about it.
okay. So Vistage Worldwide is an organization that's been in existence for the last 65 years. And it's, as the name suggests, it's worldwide. It provides peer coaching for chief executives, business owners, business leaders, that sort of thing. So what happens is, and I'm in the process of doing this right now, is forming what's called a peer advisory board or a peer advisory group. And I'm the facilitator for that and the coach. So the group, just briefly, of CEOs from diverse non-competing companies meet once a month, all day. And it's not a day off from work when they meet. It's not a social affair. It is strategy, working out each other's issues if there's problems in their business, or finding opportunity for them. As a result, Vistage has, overall, Vistage members companies grow 2.2 times faster than non-members. And even in the bad years, like we all remember 2020, how bad a year that was. Well, Vistage members' revenue grew on average by 4.6%, while their competitors, their revenue decreased by about 4.7%. So what has been found is that this really works. Now, in addition to the once a month all-day session where they meet together, and plus they hear some amazing speakers that are hired to come in. But in addition to that, each executive gets 2 hours of one-to-one coaching with me, with the chair. And so it's very, very interesting, because not only does it help these executives' businesses do well, but it really has what I call the trickle-down effect, if you will. Because if their companies do well, their employees do well. If their employees do well, everybody else does well. So that's why I find it extremely rewarding. And just to give you a bit more about Vistage, they have about 29,000 members worldwide. And if you go on their website, you can hear members speak about their experiences. But what we do know is this method absolutely works. Businesses grow, executives find more time for themselves. And the thing about a chief executive, you know, they have their board of directors, they have their C-suite, but sometimes you can't speak to those people if you're the chief executive. You need somebody else. And so in a confidential setting, they can speak to people who are not in competition with them, but are experiencing very similar things. And they really support each other. They coach each other. They are basically mentors to each other and just very, very supportive. On average, a member stays with a group for 7 years. And the only reason they typically leave is because they have either retired or they've sold their business and they've gone to live in the sun somewhere.
That's a good incentive. Let me ask you 100 questions now.
Mm.
Okay, when you say chief executive, are we talking only C-suite? Are we talking middle management? Who
No,
is
it's typically, there are other groups for middle management, but for this particular group that we're forming right now is for the C-suite, and not just chief executives. It can be a business owner. You know, so you own maybe a small business. We're looking at small to mid-sized business. You know, both can learn from each other, and it's important that they be diverse, not non-competing. So you try to get people from every industry so that they can support each other. The groups are relatively small. There's a selection process. So it's not like you just sign up and walk in. It doesn't work that way. The groups are typically 12 members, 16 maximum. And when you consider how large New York City is, you know, that's a small number of people, but you want them to be cohesive with each other, work well with each other. And so you keep it to a small group. And that's why there's a selection process. It's not, you know, sign up here and you're done. It's there's a variety of conversations that happen, meetings, and you know, so that there is a mutual benefit for everyone.
What a service, because I found even when I was doing it that it's very difficult to be at the top and or be an owner, be at the top of your management, because people look to you and they expect you to have all the answers.
Yeah.
And it's like it's I find when I do coach people of that caliber, their problem is they have no one to talk to. They have no one to admit that, oh my God, I'm stumped. I have no idea what to do with this situation, this employee, this client. And it sounds like what you're providing, in addition to fantastic training and awareness of, you know, awakening and all of that, is an opportunity, just a safe environment where people can actually go, I don't know.
Yeah.
Can actually say those words, I don't know, and feel comfortable and maybe get help from the person sitting next to them.
Well, the difference is that in these groups, there is no agenda. In other words, nobody has a hidden agenda.
Okay.
And so that there is a very high level of trust among the members. And that is the key part. I mean, I'm sure you remember five dysfunctions of a team. And I think the first one is trust. You know, if you don't have trust, you don't have a team. And so trust is really important. And in this environment, they can speak their minds without worrying about it being repeated. There are obviously confidentiality agreements. We want to emphasize that what is said remains there. We're not in Vegas, but it's that kind of thing.
You could be in Vegas. It's international. Yeah.
So, but I think it's so incredibly valuable, having watched so many chief executives struggle with different things, that I think that this is an amazing opportunity for them. And it's, you know, Vistage doesn't advertise. It's or advertise not very much. You know, there are articles about Vistage that you can find online and all of that, but it's not an organization that goes out advertising for members. We basically recruit members, make sure it's a good fit.
Well, I think the fact that the average stay is 7 years speaks well to the principles of what you're doing and the trust factor. Nobody's going to stay in a place 7 years if they don't feel comfortable. So,
and many of them stay far longer. That's
yeah.
but,
And the fact that it's 65 years old or been around that long is good, but I think the timing right now is exquisite because, like I said, post-pandemic, and let's hope that's exactly where we are, the rules, there are no rules, and it's like, so it's kind of a free-for-all. It's like, okay, what's going to work for me? It's going to work for my employees, my clients, blah, blah, blah. And just to get a little guidance from other people who are going through or have been through there must be invaluable, just invaluable. So,
well, I'm certainly I'm very excited about it, and I think it's I'm so glad that I was introduced to it. I actually heard about it from a Vistage member who's a CEO, and he told me all about it, and it intrigued me. And then the more I looked, I mean, it took me several months to actually join, and but everything I found was so good and with such high integrity. I just thought this is something I want to belong to.
And you get special training, right? As the
yes, you do get yes, we're not just thrown in. They do only select people that have worked at in top management. You've either been most of them have already been CEOs or been in the C-suite, as I have, or are currently business owners, and I'm a business owner as well. So it's because you want it to be a peer group as much as possible. So you go through a selection process as well, which is not short, it's long, and background checks and all of that kind of thing. And then you are trained. Yeah, you go through.
In our last seconds, I hate to cut you off, but I want to tell them how they can get some more information. And I want you can go to Maggie's website here, or not website, email or website.
Well, I do have a website for my business, but let me give you the email address where they can reach me.
Would you please?
So it's Maggie, MAGGIE .Johnson, JOHNSON, at Vistage, which is spelled VISTAGE, chair, CHAIR.com. So it's Maggie.Johnson at VistageChair.com.
And that's if this is intriguing, and as intriguing to you as it is to me, or if you know someone who would be interested, let Maggie know for sure. Maggie, we're out of time, but this has been so fantastic of kind of catching up online. I love that so much. Thank you so much for being on the Coaching Game.
Thank you so much, Laurie.
I want to hear more about Vistage next time we talk. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It was very nice being here. Thank you.
Bye-bye.